The year is 2008. The internet has been taken over by an obsession for kids' virtual worlds. Every single established kids franchise was scrambling to put out their new world to draw attention away from all the other ones. And until several years later, where they all collectively realized, oh my god, we're not actually making any money out of this, are we? Hey, are you making money?
No, we're not making money.
Oh my god, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? And then they all closed en masse except the ones that focused on maximizing profitability from the very beginning, or at least soon enough to keep them afloat after the bubble burst. But I swear, while that bubble was rising, it was a magnificent time. The spaces for kids and teens on the internet were flourishing, and it was, more than anything, incredibly fun. In fact, not only were brands that were exclusively focused on marketing to children getting in on the action, but also corporations with a little more broad of a reach, under the assumption that cashing in on the virtual world craze could convince some of these kids to get their parents to swing by the drive-thru. This brings me to today's topic, fast food virtual worlds. Before I continue, I need to be very clear. This video is not sponsored by anyone. I do not have any incentive to go and get you to buy the food that is being shilled by these virtual worlds. And I would like to be clear that fast food is bad for you and something that you should try to avoid eating whenever possible. That being said, if you're a person like me who is susceptible to the allure of fast food, it is extremely difficult to learn anything about this series of virtual worlds without falling victim to a fast food craving so severe that it feels like demonic possession. Be warned. Also, before I continue, I've opened up a Patreon. If you want to ensure that I'm able to make more of these videos about under-discussed zillennial media, go and sign up. There's some fun perks like getting a shout out at the end of my videos and access to a patron-only Discord, and I have some more fun perks planned in the future, so go check that out. This is going to be my first video in which I have no experience with any of the virtual worlds that I'm talking about, because even though these sites existed in the peak of my virtual world playing, somehow they completely escaped my notice. Although, if I had known about them, I'm not sure that I would have stuck around because, I prefer my virtual world a little less saturated? Wait, why was it that I never played this? Was I not getting Happy Meals anymore in 2008? Oh yeah, that's why. Pretty much from the second they released this Chick-fil-A dupe sandwich, I was off the kids menu for good, except when I wanted to get a Happy Meal specifically for the toy. So without further delay, let's explore the original fast food virtual world, McWorld. McWorld debuted on HappyMeal.com in 2008. As with most social flash games, the Wayback Machine is completely devoid of any information about the game itself, as the relevant data was embedded and broken after the discontinuation of the site. I would call this time period the golden age of kids' virtual worlds because from now to 2010, most of these sites were either being created, experiencing peak membership, or both. Afterwards, the inherently troublesome nature that is hosting social features for children, as well as the money drain that is MMO server costs, dawned upon everyone and the bubble burst. McDonald's, however, endured a little longer than the majority of these sites. McWorld survived until February 2014 and was succeeded by a gaming experience intended to replace it. McDonald's is enough of a powerhouse to afford frivolous projects like this, and probably saw enough returns with its subtle brainwashing to deem a free-to-play virtual world a worthy investment well into the tens. McWorld seems to have been the site's name based on a popular vote. This name feels a little bizarre to me because the first thing you see when you Google the term is the concept of McDonald's-driven globalization, not the website. This term seems to carry extremely negative connotation in certain contexts. Also, it's now a Minecraft term, which sucks for getting relevant search results, but it's not like they could have accounted for a concept that didn't exist at the time. It seems like McDonald's shied away from using the term in marketing after the closure of this virtual world. The promotional design company Creata is described as making most of the content for the McWorld experience. The property is no longer deemed relevant enough to be promoted on their product page, but it seems like they've maintained a steady working relationship with McDonald's, as well as several other brands with child-oriented products. It seems like most kids' tech companies, they've invested most of their recent efforts into mobile apps. One of these I'm going to be checking out later on. McWorld was unambiguously a kids site, with adult users reporting field aged out of the site's content. Let's try to figure out exactly what that content was. One of the best quality pieces of documentation are from the website of Steve Strouch, who created some of the integral pieces of design for McWorld. Most critically, he's provided us with the overworld map. With this, we can start to gather the missing pieces. These may be some of the highest quality pieces of documentation that exist about the website, and are quite possibly higher resolution than even the game itself was. I'll leave a link to this site in the description if you'd like to see these images in their full-res glory. The locations on the map are Uptown, Silly Sea, Mount Lavapalooza, Pennsylvania, Treehouse Forest, Dinostralia, Game Dome, the Pink Castle, Waikiki Beach, this Illuminati-looking place called Shush, Sunken Treasure Cove, Superopolis, Run-Amok Park, Rocket Raceway, and finally, Space Place. Some other high-quality images from this blog include the interior of the Haunted Hangout and this skate park. I'm not sure where those two appear on the map, and also the streets of Superopolis. This image from Pennsylvania is where players could adopt a virtual pet. 2 games are documented, this Monster Creator and a stealth game where you navigate a robot down a series of halls while avoiding the motion detectors. Finally, there's the M-Code screen, which shows you some redeemable outfit items that you can collect in exchange for Happy Meal codes. When I look for first-hand player accounts about this website, I've noticed that those who recall the site seem to have very fuzzy and fragmented memories. So, as someone who's never played it, I feel highly qualified to figure out what exactly the site was. Now, with the power of old YouTube, I will piece together what it was you could do on this website. One of the lengthiest pieces of documentation about McWorld is this lo-fi camera footage from the YouTube channel TrooperXZ123, in which the camera operator becomes distracted and forgets to center the camera at the screen a few minutes in. However, this video still shows some useful gameplay footage from its intended target audience. In some of these screen recordings, including this one, that FCC-obligated "Hey kids, this is advertising" banner is inconspicuously tucked into a corner, as if that little string of text is going to help kids better understand why they're suddenly obsessively thinking about McNuggets. McWorld seemed to have brand integration with just about every franchise that was appearing as a Happy Meal toy, which makes sense. Make it clear on the website which kind of toy you can get right now, and you might just convince one of these kids to beg for a Happy Meal, which means you've probably just snagged a whole family's worth of McDonald purchases. That last aspect is probably the reason why McDonald considered a free-to-play virtual world to be a worthy investment for so long. This next video clip needs a motion sickness and flashing lights warning. Skip to the next chapter to go directly to the end of this particular YouTube clip. First, it shows the sign-up process. Clicking the join button will take you to an array of vaguely emoji-looking icons, and then the next screen has a dress-up button. Unfortunately, our camera operator appears to be caught in a hurricane. The site displays a visual glitch as the loading icon gets stuck on top of an apparently loaded page. The camera operator goes off-center for a while as the player views the overworld and selects the superhero-themed location, Superopolis. There was a Ben 10 integration going on at the time. The player begins a game called Superhero Suit Up and corrects the off-center camera. This appears to be a superhero-themed dollmaker game where you can dress your avatar in a supersuit. After navigating out of that game, we're suddenly transported to a treehouse. Not all of the UI is accounted for in this video, so I can't see what he's doing to go to different locations. The garbled text seems to read "Welcome to the Treehouse Forest." Returning to the overworld, the player then navigates to an undersea location labeled the Game Dome, which hosted a variety of mini-games. The player selects a game called Tiki Toss, where they throw a coconut at a culture mashup pole, getting different amounts of points based on where you land the throw, or none if you fail to land in any of their mouths. Next, he loads up a selection called Train a Pup Game. In this game, you select the correct trick for the dog to perform in order to proceed through an obstacle course. Then we're shown a location with several farmhouses. This must be Pennsylvania, which the player passes through to arrive back at the Game Dome. This implies that the Game Dome exists as a hub for games scattered throughout the world, and you exit via the game's in-world location regardless of where you entered. This, among some other things, indicates to me that the programming execution of McWorld was a little poorly considered. Is it really that hard to make the places you enter and exit match up? He then starts up another game called Bumper Car Chaos, which appears to be a timed multiplayer collectathon, with the bumper car element being more incidental than anything else. Our camera operator is again too distracted to realize that the shot has moved off-center. It remains like this for the remainder of the video, limiting the information I'm able to gather, but the player does play 2 more games, a car customization and racing game from Rocket Raceway, and Pup and Over Race, another dog race-themed game, seemingly based around click speed and reaction time. With that video, the locations Superopolis, Pennsylvania, the Game Dome, Rocket Raceway, and the Treehouse Forest have been revealed. Maybe we can get some more clear imagery of them going forward. This channel called GMatmat had a much more tech-savvy archivist and provided us with some quality screen recordings of the site. This helpful user provided all the Happy Meal promotional items that existed during the site's run, or at the very least at the time this video was uploaded. Several of these items were brand integrations like with Bakugan, Build-A-Bear, Hello Kitty, and iCarly, but the majority were just generally appealing items like mermaid tails, mech suits, cars, unique pets, and other themed clothing and furniture. McWorld engaged in the virtual world tradition of labeling every perfectly licit promotional code as a cheat code, which is a fun little buzzword that lets players feel like they're getting special that nobody else has access to, despite all of these codes being valid once per player like any other game promo code. These codes were handled through this foxy character called Sly Spy, who is definitely not at all a ripoff of anybody. This channel's offerings are mostly tutorial-driven, but that leads us to some exploration in the form of item hunt quests. This key-based item hunt opens on a beach. This must be the Waikiki Beach location. The second key is found in the Space Place, which is themed to look like a Jetsons-esque satellite base. Next, we move to the upper left corner of the map, Uptown, which is also looking very Jetsons. Afterwards, we head down to Sunken Treasure Cove. Wow, most of these rooms are extremely barren. We're finally able to get a crisper look at Pennsylvania and a treehouse forest, which is revealed to be where the player's room is located. This area seems to not be multiplayer, or at least not public multiplayer. The end goal of this item hunt was to collect enough keys to open a new room in this location, which is an ornate palace area which you're able to customize. Also on this channel, the player provides us with a much cleaner capture of the account creation process, in which you select one of the themed avatars and then dress them up. The player also demonstrates an infinite currency exploit with the Happy Meal codes. One thing I'm yet to figure out is the role of these 3 gauges at the bottom of the screen. I'm not sure if they have any major gameplay implications, but they appear to be cumulative and not something that can run out. This next channel, Junebugs01, shows us the furniture customization in the treehouse forest area. This seems to be a fairly primitive room designer. Judging by the assets, it looks like this furniture is non-interactive and unable to be rotated, essentially rendering the furniture into a collection of stickers. This user has a large collection of Happy Meal code items and has themed their room like a hotel. This video shows the other available unlockable room, a playhouse inside a pumpkin. And after that, unfortunately, the gameplay footage seems to dry up. Not every location was documented, and not many kids felt compelled to record and post footage of the gameplay. However, Creata left us with some interesting pieces of documentation on their YouTube channel. This music video called Jack and Janet, featuring some eco-centric original characters.
This is a story about Jack and Janet, 2 best friends who love the planet.
And this promotional video created for the 2012 London Olympics. Some other archival channels of note include Humburger, which has several recovered music tracks from McWorld. I also found this music video called Yumivore.
By the way, every single day, berries make me happy when the skies are gray.
It's not great. And another called Crave My Fave, which must have been their take on Elf Yourself because it was intended to display an uploaded image of your face. And that's all that remains on the modern web about McWorld. It didn't exactly have deep cultural relevance, and so despite how many people played it and how many years it operated, kids weren't compelled to build these huge off-site fandoms that you see spring up around other virtual worlds. However, McDonald's didn't shutter because they were giving up on kids' games. Nope, instead they said, let's do it all again, and they coincided the closure of McWorld with the release of a new virtual McDonald's experience. McPlay. McDonald's, come 2014, could tell the tide of kids gaming was taking a turn for the mobile and acted accordingly. As such, every new digital release for the McDonald's brand since the closure of McWorld has been a mobile app. Admittedly, a smart move on their part with the imminent death of Flash. The thing about mobile apps is that they're particularly vulnerable to losing much more of their media than even other types of lost media games. There's no Wayback Machine for the App Store. I mean there is, but it doesn't archive apps. Anyone who tried would probably get in some hot water with legal issues. Anyways, the message here is to screen record the apps you care about as often as possible. In 10 years or so, your video may be the only evidence that some of these things ever existed. On the channel Monkey Man 2.0, we have a kid doing their best attempt at a professional-style video game review, which I really appreciate, and honestly, they did a really good job. This review makes one thing clear to me right away. After McWorld was finished, McDonald's was finished with creating new multiplayer gaming experiences. By the time that 2014 rolled around, most kids' multiplayer servers had shut down for good, and for good reason. It's just miserable to manage a social gaming experience for children. Kids are constantly trying to bully and date each other, and you have to keep out the creeps, or at least prevent creeps from learning any information about the players. This is extremely difficult to balance while keeping the chat uncensored enough to still be practical for conversation. And the website could be liable for failure to protect its young user base. Of course, the easiest way to manage this is to just cull all social and chat features and save some cash on hosting fees in the process. Even though these successor apps don't exactly qualify as virtual worlds due to being single player, I think this video would be incomplete if I didn't cover McDonald's other attempts to enter the gamersphere. So, if McPlay is just a series of single-player games, what are the offerings? Our friend Monkey Man starts up a Hot Wheels branded racing game called Adventure Race Speed Burst. It's a standard top-down racing game, and judging by the lack of on-screen controls, it probably used the gyroscope. The player then selects a game from a submenu of Angry Birds themed games. It seems like the game selections in this app cycled out frequently with new branded options. The game selected is called Feathers Will Fly, in which you simply catch feathers in a box. I suspect the games in this library are sourced from a stock collection of games in which the graphics can be switched out to suit the brand theming, allowing for a wide variety of simple game options for any of the brand tie-ins. We then get to see one of the most well-documented games from this app, Happy Ball. I'm sure this is a clone of a well-known mobile game, but I'm not enough of a mobile gamer to identify which. This is a physics puzzle game where you shoot the ball, controlling its angle and throw intensity with the aim of sinking it in the Happy Meal box. You get a better score for the level if you collect the food items in the same toss. Happy Ball seemed to have been the app's flagship game. It's complete enough of a game to fill an app on its own. One thing I'm noticing about this review is how much I'm hitting skip on the loading screens. McPlay was not a lightweight app. The player starts up a Skylanders branded game, Shark Tank's Tunnel Race. This looks like a temple run type game, but much harder and worse. The kid recording has a hard time with this one, and I don't blame him. These obstacles move very chaotically in a way that seems to suddenly screw you over when you appear to be in the clear. The game then freezes. It seems pretty clear that this was an overly ambitious game to cram into this app, and not only does it not play well as a game, it also makes the app unstable. This newer video demonstrates some branded holiday features with an Illumination movie crossover. A harp instrument, a janky motion-controlled bell instrument, and this music box that looks like a slot machine. Each one comes with its own minigame or can be played with on its own. I could go and inspect every game footage that I could find labeled McPlay, but I think we've gotten the picture here. McPlay operated by hosting a highly varied and frequently evolving catalog of games. This wide variety and certain more carefully constructed elements of the app made this original app highly favored to later iterations. Before checking out McDonald's current app offering, there's one more piece of media that we need to cover. The most mysterious McDonald's release of all, McDonald's Happy Studio. Easily the most poorly documented of the games I'm discussing today, McDonald's Happy Studio has proved a challenge to research. At first, I was under the impression that it was an app released in 2017 as a companion to McPlay. I soon realized that this wasn't the full story. A video posted by a former developer of Happy Studio reveals that it was, in fact, a Flash-based desktop site. In the description, the site is described as releasing in 2011 and running for 4 years, apparently outliving its predecessor McWorld, although just barely. The comments reveal that it was probably the most beloved of any of the releases I've discussed so far. People's memories of this one are truly glowing. And wow, I can see why. Just looking at the overworld animation, this looks like the most advanced and developed game we've seen yet. First, it shows this gate area, which has some degree of customizability. The player buys a character, and then the purchased character walks around. An achievement is unlocked for placing a decoration. Then we get to look at the also very nice looking map, and we travel to an area called the Space Invention Lab. Oh my god, this one was awesome! I'm more upset I missed this than anything else. The next area we're shown is called the Wild. I think this video must have been taken post-closure or in an empty server because every room we see is completely devoid of other players, which feels truly eerie with all these well-designed spaces, like a ghost town that lost its population so quickly and so recently that nothing has decayed. These rooms are extremely well crafted. There's an entire How to Train Your Dragon themed location, and it has none of the afterthought stock game quality that the app did. The same can't really be said for this platformer minigame, which is admittedly a quality drop from the rest that I've seen so far. The next area we get to see is the Pet Adoption Center, and we see the adoption process, in which the player selects a dog that is bipedal, but his body is so tiny and squashed that he barely registers as such. The next area we see is called the Port of Quests. I assume you would usually be able to initiate a quest from this location, but this game seems inactive at the time of recording, so there's only that ghost town quality that I mentioned before. With every room I've seen, I am blown away at how expansive and well-crafted these locations are. Next, we visit Happy City and get a look at the customizable player profile page. From this page, you can also view your achievements and your friends list. We walk through the city and play another relatively lazy-looking minigame. This screen called Missions provides the player with several gameplay objectives and reward the in-game currency stars. Another happy minigame. I hate to say it, but all the minigames so far have looked like skips. Hold on, I swear to God this music is Sims McDonald's remix. player then starts up a game called Storm Chaser and... Oh my god! The games look awesome when they're not about that godforsaken box. Case in point, the next game we see is called Happy Cannon, which looked very mid. And then the video wraps. The description claims the player base was about 2,400,000 kids, which sounds like a big number, but is in reality an unsustainably small figure for a big corporation's virtual world. So why didn't Happy Studio catch on? I suspect that the reason why simply boils down to the name. Happy Studio is very vague and doesn't really evoke McDonald's. McWorld and McPlay both clearly convey the McDonald's branding in the name alone. Happy Studio could be literally anything. Animal Crossing, Happy Studio. The Sims, Happy Studio. Doom, Happy Studio. A girl can dream. The game honestly looked incredible, except for you. And I'm not surprised why people look back on it so fondly. Unfortunately, a pure well-meaning expression of creativity is seldom rewarded in corporate world, and so the site shuttered with little fanfare. Happy Studio seemed to have an attempted mobile revival, which sadly shared none of the features with the desktop site and was an extremely pared-down single-player experience. I think Happy Studio serves to remind us that even with these highly corporate projects that are largely unacknowledged as valid works of art, you can still see the involvement of artists. The fact of the matter is, a vast majority of creatives in our society are relegated to these corporate tasks, and the people who care about their jobs want to inject as much of their own creative touch as they can within the parameters set by their bosses. The designer in the description of this documentation video was mournful regarding the loss of this virtual world, and I can see why. I think a lot of people tend to dismiss kids' virtual worlds as meaningless big money projects with no heart or soul compared to other types of video games, but what I see here betrays that notion. These virtual worlds are often made with smaller teams and smaller budgets than one would assume. While it's true that sometimes these worlds are patchwork assets with too many designers to cleanly identify who made what on the screen, others are much more individually driven with entire areas and game functions designed by one person. It's important not to forget that when these worlds close, not only do the players lose a cherished game, but these artists and designers lose the tangible evidence of their work. Screenshots and recordings are never going to be able to convey the full scope of a project, which is inherently incomplete without the aspect of interactivity. These videos can't show us how the game felt to play, how smooth the UI was to interact with, and even if you have the source files backed up, the social element is lost forever. No joyful populated city centers, only a ghost town. These aspects, after the site's termination, are lost forever. And to think that this incredible website may have been truly gone if this designer didn't go out of their way to back it up. I may have never figured out that it was ever a desktop site at all. It's a chilling reminder of all the unremembered, undocumented art that we've already lost. Out of the McPlay app evolved McDonald's current digital offering, the Happy Meal app. Let's take a look for ourselves. Oh, these balls are responsive to your phone's position, that's fun. They still use that hilarious phrase, "Hey kids, this is advertising." Oh god, that thing with teeth is still the mascot? I really thought they would have done that thing in by now, like original movie Sonic. Although, to be fair, McDonald's has never had a non-creepy mascot. Although Happy is worse. The first feature is the games, which all involve the device's gyroscope and their controls, for highly mixed results. The next feature is digital books, which are 2 animated book experiences using stories from Cressida Cowell's Tiny Detectives. I think this is very cute, and I approve of anything that reminds me of living books. Next is digital masks, which are Snapchat filters based on fruits, which I guess is healthy, but not really at all evocative of McDonald's. Kids might think these are fun, but in comparison to other photo filters, I think even my child self would think this is exceptionally lame. Next up is my favorite corner of the app, and you'll see why in a second. I'm going to skip this first feature for a moment and check out the others. There's a blank drawing pad, cool, fine, cool. There's a coloring page, a faceless Happy for you to draw on. Oh no, I gave him anxiety. There's some backdrops for you to draw on top of. All cool and great, but there's one thing in particular that really stands out to me. Okay, so they're having you draw Happy. Okay, I'll follow along the lines. So they're having me draw the eyes? Happy's been working for McDonald's for a few years, so let's give him a 1,000-yard stare to reflect that. Okay, sufficiently haggard. Arms now? Why not a few extra fingers just in case? The other arm can be a tentacle. I think I've cursed this thing a little too much by now, so I'll give him one Chanel boot as recompense. But his other leg has to be a wheel. Time for a mouth. Yeah, that seems to be the right mood. And...
Oh my god!
I'm not going to lie, if I was a kid, I would sit and play with this all day, straying further and further away from the subject of Happy Meal box each time. Admittedly, this feature existed in the McDonald's apps as far back as McPlay, but I just wanted us to share in the surprise together. The final feature requires me to go and buy a Happy Meal, and writing this video has already compelled me to go get fries like 3 times, so I'm not going to do that again. Go get one yourself if you're so curious. It's probably just an extremely lame AR experience. While I appreciate that they preserved the animation game, it seems like this version of the Happy Meal app is extremely pared down compared to previous versions of the app, and if I were still a kid, this would get uninstalled pretty fast. There's nothing even close to the standalone games that the previous app had, and it's made even more sparse by forcing you to scan a Happy Meal box in order to see a good portion of the content. The most common complaint and unfavorable reviews of this app is that it pales in comparison to the 2014 release, and from what I can see, that complaint is fairly justified. McDonald succeeded in creating a lightweight and minimally glitchy app, but sacrificed a lot of features in order to achieve this. While I would say that the original app did need some paring down, the current incarnation is just a little too much, and there's just not enough there to justify keeping it downloaded. With how this video has been going so far, you may have assumed that I was only going to be talking about McDonald's. However, McDonald's did not monopolize the concept of fast food virtual worlds. Let's take a look at its fairly unthreatening competitor, Club BK from Burger King. Is this that thing where there's a wheelchair user who's just named Wheels? Oh, no, that was from earlier. Club BK, distinct from BK Kids Club. Hold on, this animation looks just like a Goofy movie to me. I wonder if there's some directorial overlap there. Anyways, Club BK was Burger King's attempt at a kids' virtual space, and I don't think it's a stretch to assume that it was created as a direct response to the success of McWorld. While I didn't play this one either, I think it's more visually coherent than McWorld. Not exactly memorable, but it's at least nice and cute to look at in opposition to McWorld, which could tend towards eye strain. Although the final result is excessively minimal and white for a kid's virtual world. The bulk of the documentation for this game exists on the designers' websites, who were working under the design firm Design Kitchen at the time. Even fewer kids were recording and posting footage of Club BK than McWorld, so our options for viewing gameplay are limited. One piece of the website that remains intact is the site prologue, which explains the lore of the game, albeit in an amateurish and badly mixed voiceover track that is only comprehensible about half the time.
Heard love discovering new and exciting places.
The prologue tells the story of a planet named, Brian, who terraforms when he falls asleep after getting lost in space. A group of space colonists land on the face of Brian, who was awoken after his excavation. He apparently leaves the planet that he formed in shreds after waking up, but it's okay because Brian and the space colonists are friends now? And then the prologue ends. Okay, so that clarified nothing. What did the gameplay look like? On designer David Ham's portfolio page, we can see the character creator. I'm only assuming, but it seems to employ the same genderless dress-up convention that McWorld did. Eric Ravenstein's website has the most complete look at the design employed in Club BK. It turns out that our fair Brian is actually a spaceship, which I didn't catch because I couldn't hear the inaudible narration. This promotional video gives us a quick flyover of the site's features. Customize an avatar in a room, make friends, complete quests, play games. Basically, a cookie-cutter kids virtual world with no particular interesting gimmick. Maybe this site's games were fun, but it's not surprising to me that this site has largely faded from public consciousness. Hey kids, this is advertising! Are they required to include that specific sentence? With the hey kids? Eric Ravenstein's website has a lot of useful screenshots that give us a more clear picture of how the game operated. First, there's a few in-game menus. Like many virtual worlds, there was a mobile phone feature. The buttons are image-based, so I can only guess at what they did. I assume these 2 upper buttons change your avatar and clothes, these middle buttons would take you to different locations, and the bottom buttons are help and code redemption. There was an in-game Burger King you could visit in which you could get a meal, which is more overt product placement than anything I saw from McDonald's besides the ubiquitous presence of the Happy Meal box. Like any virtual world, Club BK has stores. In this game, many of them are accessible via the whale-like spaceship Brian. There's a clothing shop called Sweet Duds, Crown Arcade, Ted's Stuffin' Things, a cinema, and of course, a Burger King. Elsewhere, there's a pet store called Bodie's Paws and Claws, in which the only visible options were dogs and cats. The currency in this game was called crowns and were accumulated via participation in the minigames and could be spent at these storefronts. There was also a bartering-based storefront called the Swap Shop. It's not clear whether you bartered with players or with an NPC. This game seemed to have an extremely clunky chat system. It seems to be exclusively one-on-one and alienated from the rest of the game, with a stiflingly limited selection of options. I assume there was not a ton of incentive to chat in this game. The remaining documentation on this website covers the Flash mini-games. There's this game called Clear the Clouds, which seems self-explanatory, a 2-player car racing game, a fishing game on a boat, and a SpongeBob-branded Bubble Pop game, and this platformer set in a dark forest called Flashlight Search. This screen indicates that the hangouts for this virtual world were sorted into various planets that the player can visit. This area, labeled Gustav, seemed to be a quest initiation point. I genuinely don't know how the prologue is supposed to tie into this game, or the significance of Brian beyond being an in-game location. There are a couple YouTube captures of Club BK. The best is some documentation from Design Kitchen's YouTube channel, which shows this Marvel brand integration that was happening at the time with the release of Iron Man 2. We get to see some of the overworld in action. This game looks very much like Poptropica to me, minus the Jeff Kinney art style, and I suspect the quest lines weren't nearly as involved, but the way that the character movements and settings are designed seems very reminiscent. This video shows us a demo of a game called Zoom Space. I'm not sure what to call this type of Flash game, but I've seen a ton of them, and honestly I really enjoy this type of game. Maybe climbing or fall avoidance? It appeals to that same segment of your brain that makes you want to play The Floor is Lava. There's a tiny handful of player uploads. This video from a channel called Funny Productions shows us the site's birthday event, referred to here as Birthday Moon. It's a short platforming segment where you blow out these oversized candles by activating machines scattered throughout the level. Another video from this channel shows a competition feature, in which users captioned a comic with slightly animated panels featuring SpongeBob characters. The winning entry is, captivating. One of their videos shows the customizable room location. This room is filled with several items themed around the Easter Bunny movie Hop. Their last Club BK uploads is simply about how they're excited that they're promoting the movie Hop. I've truly never witnessed anyone so enthusiastic about Hop. If other screen recordings of this site exist out there, I wasn't able to find them. However, I think we got a fairly clear picture of this very straightforward virtual world. Burger King has similarly not gone gentle into that good night, instead releasing the app Burger King Junior Club. Let's take a look at this one too. So I can choose between English or... English. What? Lebanon or Kuwait? Well, this definitely isn't an app for Americans, so there's no way I could access the content that requires you to get a kid's meal, but let's check it out anyways. The app also begins with a prologue similar to its desktop predecessor. Basically, the fast food is going to space.
Let's explore together the outer space.
And that's all you need to know. Yeah, I like this already. Yeah. Okay, a lot of people in the comments of my videos describe the properties I'm covering as a fever dream, but actually that's what this is. The sound design, the visuals, I think I could be hallucinating any part of this. Let's hit play. The first game we have unlocked is Junior Club Mad Balls. Okay, this game is very Mario Party. You pick a character. I immediately chose the character that I'm most personally drawn to, named iFry. You defend your territory and compete by maintaining your stock of lives against the NPC characters. This is kind of nice. It's very easy, obviously, but it's relaxing, and the gyroscope controls aren't janky. One drawback is that the balls don't head in your direction frequently enough, sometimes leading you to win without doing much of anything, as the NPCs are dunces. However, it can start to feel like a challenge if there's several balls in the field and everyone's ganging up on you. This is a highly paywalled kids app. All of the remainder of the games require you to scan a card provided by a kids meal. I'm genuinely enamored with this weird little app and would run out right away to pick up some kids meals, but unfortunately I'm not planning to visit Kuwait or Lebanon before this video is uploaded. I kind of expected the other things I talked about today to be a little more like Burger King Junior Club, insofar as overt product placement and paywalling large portions of the apps with kids' meals. Like this New York Times article mentioned, these desktop fast food virtual worlds were built on the idea of subtlety. We don't want the kids to know that they're being brainwashed. So instead of incorporating the actual iconic fast food imagery into their virtual worlds, they were a little more covert. The imagery of the Happy Meal box inherently invokes the food inside the box, which is why it's much more likely that you started craving McDonald's during that segment. It's a carefully designed set of shapes that has a Pavlovian response in every person subjected to their marketing campaigns. And we, the dogs, reliably drool. Anyway, I can't express how sad I am that I can't see the rest of these games, because I truly do love this app as like a surreal art experience. There are probably other kids' fast food apps out there, but since these are the only ones of the virtual world precedent, I think these are the only ones relevant to cover today. Oh, you thought fast food virtual worlds were a thing of the past, didn't you? You thought they were a relic of a bygone era. Well, they are, but what if I told you that their desiccated corpses are threatening to be revived at any moment? And like true zombies, they're not going to come back the way you loved and remember them. Oh no, they're coming back twisted and wrong. Enter Metaverse, everyone's favorite VR experience. I assume that Markerberg said in some kind of board meeting, "Okay guys, what are we about? We're about soulless corporate vibes, promoting fundamentally unhealthy behavior, and making a quick buck." And then a bunch of fast food reps at the table were like, "Oh my god, me too." And then all of them and Jesse Eisenberg linked arms and skipped into the sunset. And afterwards, they spawned the concept of fast food in the metaverse. No longer a cool and fun concept for kids, but basically just a troublesome alternative to Uber Eats and another way to ruin the lives of fast food workers who are already multitasking far beyond what their pay justifies. So far, all of these things are only being threatened and exist only in prototype, if at all. In fact, a lot of these things seem to be playing into the now mostly exploded NFT craze, so it's questionable whether this plan will ever come to fruition. In fact, when I go to search for promotional and concept art for these fast food VR experiences, I mostly only receive highly edited stock reels instead of anything that seems to be specific to the product at hand. The only exception to this is Walmart. I think that brand's forays into the digital space are an odd and interesting topic to cover in a video on its own. To be honest, I don't particularly hope this ever comes to exist. I have no love for Meta because it's a gigantic parasitic social media conglomerate, and I have no well wishes for the metaverse. Frankly, if this did come to exist, I think it would be exclusively used by crypto bros and VR nerds for the novelty of it, and ultimately abandoned due to being, as I said, just a more inconvenient version of using your phone to order Uber Eats. But more than that, really, I would just like this whole concept of fast food virtual worlds to remain untainted by this whole nonsense. Without a doubt, there is a greedy and cynical aspect to these original worlds, but there's just something a little more defensible about centering these experiences around letting kids have fun, even if they start spontaneously longing for potato-inspired sodium wedges. And that's all I have about fast food virtual worlds. Did you play any of these games? Are you hungry now? Am I secretly a shill for these companies? I'm not. I'm working on a big video right now about all of Disney's virtual worlds, and I'm not sure if that's going to be done in a timely manner, so the next one is either going to be that or something smaller so I can keep a timely upload schedule. In the meantime, share the weirdest thing you remember about Club Penguin. Only Club Penguin, you'll see why eventually. And your comment may just appear in that Disney video. Okay,